Hello and welcome to Politics Today. I'm Farooq Pitafi. Viewers, if you recall, if you have been watching this program for quite some time, you must recall how many times have we talked about counter-terrorism in this country. Factually, it is so many times that even I have lost count. But while we keep on talking about terrorism and fighting, need to fight terrorism, there are incidents that one has to actually talk about. For example, there is one incident that took place in Sahiwal. By now, I'm sure that you have gone through all the major details of the story where a family was killed in police action in broad daylight in front of the children of the family. So immediately after that, a GIT was formed, and we know that there is going to be action immediately after the GIT report. Tomorrow at 5, the GIT will present its report. But that is one aspect. This incident has three major aspects. One is, of course, police action. What exactly were they thinking? What exactly was the context? How to avoid the various flaws that might be there. The second is political response. And the third one, of course, is media response as well. Regarding political response, we saw Prime Minister of Pakistan immediately taking notice. After that, we saw tweets, we saw statements, and then the Prime Minister also instructed the Chief Minister of Punjab to take immediate action, and action is being taken as we speak. The JIT that we talk about is under process. So we are not actually going to go into the content or the merits of the entire case. What we are going to do is we are going to talk about the political responses, then the media responses as well, and the most important thing, police reforms, because there is a lot of talk on these matters these days. I did an Urdu program a few days ago in which we focused on possible police reforms as well. Today we are going to try to do justice to all the three aspects. In order to help us understand these matters, we are joined by Nusrat Wahid Sahiba, MNA of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, the ruling party. Thank you very much, ma'am, for being part of the program. Next to her is Kamaluddin Tipu Sahab, former IGP of Islamabad. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Next to him is Usama Azim Chaudhry, a regular on this show, used to be regular on this show, is a regular on PTV World. He is a lawyer, young but very talented. Thank you very much for being part of the program as well. Ma'am, I have to start with you. Regarding political response, do you think that political response was good enough, or something more could be done?
Something more could be done.
Okay.
It's not enough because these things have been happening, I think, from the time of the, you can say, the army rulers. They have started this, and this has become.
How come army rulers? I mean,
it's okay.
You're from Karachi. In Karachi,
Yeah.
it was happening in 90s as well.
Yes. So this has increased in the time of Shehbaz Sharif, Chief Ministership in Punjab, and they have so many encounters. I have been watching videos that they took boys to some house and they were talking and chatting and like nothing is going to happen, and all of a sudden guns fired and the boys were lying down.
Yeah, but you're talking about regular police, right?
Yeah.
This is counter-terrorism department.
Yes.
It is
Actually,
sort of semi-independent. Reports
semi,
only to
but
IG.
actually, the thing is that our department, police department, different type of police departments, they wanted to get, they wanted to get that we are superior, we know superior than the other department. So I think they acted to prove themselves that they are better than that, because they got some information that this type of car and this type of man is
So it was an overkill.
Yes, it was an overkilling, definitely.
Okay, we are going to talk about that as well, ma'am, and we have to talk about laws that can be introduced. But let me bring in Kamaluddin Tipu Sahab. Sir, your take on the incident and what could have been done better?
Thank you very much. First of all, I will take this opportunity to my personal condemnation of this incident. It is very tragic. It has saddened us all. We are all family people looking at the footage. It was very saddening to see. And even those young girls who were not speaking, they spoke a lot. So having said that, I would say that I think this was an incident waiting to happen.
Okay. How so?
Because in our context, our counter-terrorism measures mostly, I think we have relied on extrajudicial measures. And it started in Karachi, it's happening all over. Although it's intelligence-led operations, but still then when you do operations, you have an information, you have an intention and what you want to do, what is the quality of information, who fed that information, whether you have verified that information. And then you have what you want to do when you go in an operation, what would be the method. And then how do you administer that method? And there are certain SOPs and instructions on that, whether they were complied with or not. And then there's a conclusion, the briefing, debriefing and everything. Whether we do it or not, that is to be seen. But I think in our context, we usually, when the method is concerned, once we have been doing it, you might have heard a lot about these different operations going on. They have done so many thousands of combing operations. And in combing operations...
But they're usually intelligence-based operations, right? They're different in structure than this one. Here we saw in broad daylight, in public eye, and frankly, for 15, 16 years something, we have been fighting terrorism. This is for the first time, at least in Punjab, if I recall it correctly, that something has happened in broad daylight in public eye with the recordings available. So there's something different this time, right?
Yeah, that's very strange, and they have changed their statements many times. First of all, a terrorist, then there was other statement, then there was other statement. And I think it was covering up because the consequences of having operations, botched up operations, the police knew that it will be very grave. So I think they have changed their statements. So that is one of the, but it looks like it was a very poorly planned operation and based on maybe wrong information. Apparently, it doesn't look that this was a terrorist, but I think the JIT should work. One thing I will add.
But here's a human angle as well. Even when you take out a terrorist, if they're children, how can you expose them to that violence? That becomes a serious issue, is it not?
That is very serious. If you look at there is a famous study on violence by Gilligan that why the people do violence, because police this is a state arms, this is a state control on violence. But it is because to do some justice and to undo some injustice. So once the violence is done, it has also psychological effects.
Trauma.
They also say that offender was once a victim. So all those people who have seen that violence happening in front of them, the near and dear one, I think it will have a profound psychological effect.
So when you were saying that the children were silent and yet they were speaking, you are referring to the possibility of PTSD, post-traumatic syndrome, huh?
Exactly.
Right. That is important. Let me bring in, Osama, your take on the incident and then connect it with the legal structure that we have right now.
Thank you. Pitafi sir, before coming here, I researched into this entire scenario very deeply. I heard what Raja Basharat Saab had to say. I heard what the child had to say. I've gone through the contradictions in the statements. They have planted one thing, they've retracted it, they've given a new narrative. Having said all of that, that is for the fact-finding mission, is for the GIT, and I look as forward to the report as you do. That's not what concerns me. There's a couple of aspects. One, this incident taking place in front of children, that in no civilized society is acceptable. Secondly, such an incident happening in broad daylight on a highway, that is not acceptable at all. If there was sufficient intelligence that this was happening, they should have cordoned off the area. That provision is available in law. They could have synchronized this operation with the highway patrol, maybe half a kilometer ahead or half a kilometer behind the car. There was 50 ways to do this thing, but it wasn't done. My understanding is that under your terrorism laws, especially the 97 Act, the officers do have the right to fire but that is as a last resort. You
Right.
need to give a warning. If you're fired at first, that is what the Supreme Court has laid down on the matter. If you're fired at first, then you may retaliate.
Okay.
And also the seniority of an officer.
You cannot shoot a person to kill without
Absolutely.
being provoked.
Absolutely.
Is it what you're saying?
That is what I'm saying. There's a PLD to 1998, which,
And you're referring to 1997.
yes.
After 97, we had more laws.
We have had more laws. We have had more laws, but at the end of it, there's two very basic principles, and they have been envisaged in our constitution since 1973. There is a right to life. No one shall be deprived of life, as except in accordance with the law. Now, where does the law say that you can go out on a highway, start shooting people?
Right.
What are we on, a purge or something?
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't work like this. If you have had reasonable intelligence, you cordon off the area, make sure the public is not watching it.
Yeah, I'm less concerned at this moment about the orchestration of the entire thing, because one is going to see the report that is going to come tomorrow. So the sociology of incident will come out as well.
Absolutely.
What I'm concerned right now is I want to look at the laws that are there, because there was one aspect that was quite intriguing. It was said repeatedly, not by the Prime Minister alone, by others as well, that if found guilty, people will receive exemplary punishment. What exactly is exemplary punishment in this case?
Well, they can be imprisoned for it. I don't know if it would amount to murder or not. It would require more research to that, or manslaughter for that matter, negligent manslaughter for that matter. There are
Not capital punishment.
I don't think it would go that far-fetched, because at the end of it, you're weighing that with national security, or you're weighing that against a threat.
But you realize that since we have been fighting terrorism, and since this department, CTD, in past has killed some really jet black terrorists also, it is important for the organization to clear its name.
Absolutely it is. For them to survive, they were formed in 2010, if I'm not wrong. And ever since then, they must have done incredible jobs.
One last question before I go back to ma'am. Do we need new laws on terrorism?
Absolutely. Law is something, it's a living organism. It needs reforms on, let's say, a yearly basis at least. The society evolves. There's different types of things that you become privy to, which you probably weren't before. Just recently, the Law and Justice Commission conducted...
and this is what I was talking about at the start.
Absolutely.
We discussed it in a Urdu program as well.
Absolutely, that is the need of time. You cannot survive without that.
Right. Ma'am, coming back to you, ma'am, the question is, now Law and Justice Commission has actually introduced certain possible amendments and certain proposals. Your government is in majority in the parliament. There's need of the hour to correct the police laws and the other laws as well. When are you going to introduce all these laws? Bills actually in the parliament.
See, bills have been introduced to the assembly. Actually, just now we have started our session, and last week after the Shehbaz Sharif has become the chairman of PSC. So now we have started making new rules and new laws and everything, and I think in this week we will do some reforms also.
Okay.
And the most important thing is that in reforms, what we should do, it's not just the training of killing people. We should train them mentally also. They should train them. They should have some humanity in themselves also. It's not that they got the gun and they started firing.
But you have to realize that in terrorist cases, there are certain cases where you have to respond immediately.
But
if you don't do, there might be the possibility of some kind of blowback, right?
Definitely.
A terrorist can be carrying some kind of
but not
suicide
in the
vest
presence,
or something like that.
In the presence of the children, they should know that this car has children, this car has women in it, and 13-year-old girl, she died. Two little girls, they were watching their parents dying.
They are mum. I've seen zero expression on their faces. It must be quite a shock.
Trauma. They were in trauma, and that trauma will last, I think, years and years.
Yeah.
And all these things should be, to educate not only policemen, but the people also. Our people, they don't know how to behave, they don't know how to react to some situation.
We are talking about a very specialized branch. We are not merely talking about police force in general.
These type of people, they have been trained initially they have been trained in the previous government, and we know that in previous governments these things happen frequently.
Okay.
These things happen
Tipu
frequently.
Saab,
People
Tipu Saab is
started.
smiling at this moment. I don't know, there must be something to add here.
He,
But go on,
he
go
might
on.
be in the previous government, I don't know. So
They serve the state.
actually, Pakistan is in turmoil right now, and we need to reform each and every.
Yeah, but
you know,
your government on one side is very lucky that it has perhaps the best intellectual resources available, so many task forces, so many people working on various proposals. Then the state is actually forthcoming. Law and Justice Commission has done a lot. Others are doing it.
Your PM has.
Is the parliament doing anything also in terms
Yeah,
of research?
today we have been
Apart from
discussing.
debate?
No, debate is necessary. You know.
No, apart
Debate-
from debate. Debate is necessary, but your primary functions
Tomorrow or
are
day after
lawmaking
tomorrow,
and oversight.
Yes, tomorrow or day after tomorrow we will do
Okay.
these things also.
Right. Before I ask you a question, Tipu Sahab, do you want to add to what was said?
Yeah,
Because
I
you
mean,
were smiling at
Yeah,
that.
it's not the previous government and the previous to previous government and the military regime. Actually, the government servants are there. All that they're
Right.
doing a job.
Absolutely.
That actually gives fuel to this impression that we should have police reforms. This government, they started a very good law. They actually made a law, Police Act 2017.
Okay. The previous government.
This in KP.
Okay,
And
okay.
I mean, that set the police working in the right direction. Although the police culture, it takes a lot, maybe decades to change, but still they have set the right direction. And in Punjab, actually, they put in the back burner. I think this incident, it necessitates that the government and the Prime Minister has said in this tweet that he would also do something about it.
Right.
So I think this incident has given also impetus to
Right.
have new laws, and the police should be autonomous. It should not be the previous government or this government. They
Yeah.
should be professional, autonomous. They should be socially responsive, and which the law of the KP, it has that objective. You see, in 1861,
Sir.
the police is only the instrument at the hand of the government. So it's a tool. So there was no social responsibility, there was no public input, there was no participative policing, democratic policing. So I think the time has come that we should have a shift to
Some kind of reform.
That's right.
We move beyond the colonial legacy
That's
and the
right.
politics. That point is made. But regarding the SOPs, when you know that there might be a terrorist, and suppose he is using human shield, what are the SOPs? How to handle it?
Actually, there are SOPs on use of force. The UN also has it, and one of the thing is that minimum use of force. Life is precious. It's a fundamental human right. So there are SOPs that in that kind of circumstances, how to act,
Okay.
how to use minimum force. Mr. Osama, he has mentioned that the area should have cordoned off. There should have been more force, and proper planning should have been done. But we really don't know that, because I see so many things happening here. The information point blank as in front of the family. So there must be something wrong with the information intelligence they got.
Information, or at least the people who were there
Yeah, that's
conducting
right.
the
Yeah.
carrying out the operation.
Yeah, and I can also see so many other angles into that, and I hope that JIT would also look into it. But at the same time, I'll add that the
Enlighten
time
us.
given to
And
JIT.
share those angles with us.
Yeah, first of all, there might be a personal vendetta. You see, they have been doing this operation for very long, and they're very good at it, and they have helped us achieve peace.
Right. How big is CTD per se in Punjab?
All the provinces, the full additional IGP is the head of that this thing, and they have a very good. They have also developed their own small intelligence units.
So
But
this unit was not the only one. There must be many others.
it was a district. I think it was Saiwal district
Right.
unit.
Okay.
So it has its own hierarchy.
Okay.
And they have been doing a tremendous job. My fear is that because of this incident and because of this overuse of force or the blatant use of force by few, I mean, all the good work has gone down the drain.
Right.
And that is a very bad thing which has happened. And it has also affected the morale of the general police.
Right.
I mean,
I want to understand, and Osama, I'm coming to you in a bit, but let me ask Tipu Saab another thing. What are the practices abroad, especially in America, in UK, elsewhere, which might be fighting terrorism? I remember when 7/7 actually took place, there was a lot of talk whether the law enforcement be allowed shoot to kill. And then they permitted them, but it was a very limited window in which they allowed. What exactly are their practices, and why we haven't been able to bring that to our country?
the UN says in their resolution that the terrorism should be fought through the criminal justice system.
Right.
There are different kind of threats. One is the criminal threat, the policing threat. The other is a military threat. So the government has to determine. But I would say that there should be one force handling with that. Now we are, dealing so many, even when we make a GIT, we add so many people from different, organizations. ATA has a Praveen for that, but
Right.
we have a GIT for, we think that we can, I think this
So
tendency
you
should
have
be curbed.
objection to the military side being represented, or the civilians? Certain
No, I
civilian
am saying that if it is a policing threat, let the police have it. For example, I give you example that
But
when
sir,
we,
with due respect, there is an issue of credibility. When it comes to Army's involvement in ISIS, usually it is thought that their verdict will be trusted if they are actually adding their input. And this is a generic issue, a general issue. Wherever you go, you'll encounter this sentiment.
no, military is doing a lot of good job and they have delivered on a lot of operations they are doing, and they have a very strong hierarchy, command and control and
Yeah, and
resources
they are
also.
not devolved like police.
Yes. And my only thing is that there should be one agency dealing with that.
Okay.
And if it's a policing threat, let the police handle it. If there is specialized skill required, investigative skills, we should engage the, the services of those. But just because we have to involve everyone for the sake of it, I think we should not do it.
Right. Osama Kamaluddin Tipu Saab has said that according to UN practices, best practices involve dealing the terrorism issue through the legal system, right? And yet we keep on creating new laws rather than fixing the entire system, because we don't know how long terrorism is going to last in this country. Who's going to fix the entire legal system? Who's going to actually take care of the police laws as well? And what exactly needs to be done right now?
Without a doubt, it has to be the parliament. Both the houses of the parliament have to work together while addressing this issue.
Okay.
The committees need to be formed. There
You're
needs to be an
raising this
extensive-
point in the time of a hung parliament.
Absolutely.
And in the past, we didn't have a hung parliament. We didn't see any progress. Did we?
Absolutely, but at the end of it, last time I was here, we had this discussion as well. What is the role of a parliamentarian? That is to make laws. You represent me in that house. Your job is to legislate on behalf of the people of Pakistan. If you're failing to do that, whether you're in the opposition or whether you're in the government, you're failing drastically. You're breaching your oath that you take as per the third schedule.
Yeah, but that argument would actually undermine the idea of majoritarian rule in the country.
Absolutely. You need
You
to
have
put-
opposition as well. And
Absolutely.
their manifestos will not actually match.
It's not about the manifesto per se. Manifesto hinges upon your politics. This is something which is beyond politics. This is national interest. I think the opposition and the government can put their heads together
but,
and they can actually
You
collaborate.
understand that if I'm one party and you're another,
Absolutely.
your interpretation of national interest, its operationalization at least, when it comes to lawmaking, will be different from mine.
Absolutely,
So how do
that
you
is true. That
actually-
is true. But there are certain things. That's exactly what I'm saying. That is the purpose of the committees. You have those committees. You brainstorm those ideas, and you go to the committee stage before you actually table the bill before the parliament. So you have extensive stakeholder interaction. You have brainstorming. You engage everyone in that process, and then whatever the best fit is, that is what you put forward.
Yeah,
so
but-
what you're saying is that
I
interpretations
mean,
might be
ideally,
different.
what you are saying should happen. It doesn't. I remember during People's Party's time, JUIF was heading a standing committee, and there a bill actually stayed for 2.5 years.
But Pitafi Sahib, if you let personal interests affect legislations, these problems are going to surface. This is a time Pakistan is in dire need, that you think beyond party lines, you think as a Pakistani, and you try working towards the betterment of this country and the people of this
what
country.
you are doing is actually appealing to their better senses or better angels, right?
I voted for these people.
Right.
People in the parliament, that is their
Not
job.
all of them.
Well,
Not
I
across
voted
the
for
spectrum.
one. I voted
you can
for
only
one.
vote for one party, right?
Absolutely, but
And there are
the
many
idea,
parties in
But
the
what
parliament.
the idea of democracy is that you elect your rulers who will go and who will look after your best interest.
Yeah.
How it works in the UK is people are not involved in like the way people are involved in current affairs in Pakistan. I've never seen people in the UK involved in politics like that. They're busy with their own lives. They need to win a living for themselves, and they say my MP is responsible for this. When will our MPs become responsible for
That
this?
is not the case with the US.
That's
People
not the case, but
love
again-
to talk and they listen to radio and television as well.
Absolutely, but see again, we also need to see where we inherit our democracy from. So if we inherit our law from the UK, I think we also get our parliamentary norms from the UK.
Okay. That is quite an
I would
interesting
like to
thing.
add to this
Sir.
thing. I think Osama is right that the lawmaking should be a dynamic process. The situation changes and you make laws, and the parliament will make laws. And there is also from our history, we have been getting together on certain issues. National Election Plan is one of the case in point. That when there was the incident, the Army Public School.
We
Peshawar.
always have to wait for an
Yeah,
incident.
so
Yeah.
maybe this is this catalyst, for making, revamping the laws and some of the procedures also. But my point is also another thing, that once you are doing a duty, a job, performing a job, and once you're getting good at it, then something like this happens.
Okay. But where is the failure? Is it a legal failure? Is it a training failure? Is it basically oversight failure?
It's, I think, combination of all
All three.
Training,
Wow.
yeah, for example.
After fighting against terrorism for 16 years, we are talking about this now.
No, but this happens even in the advanced countries. This
Yeah.
kind of incidents can happen.
Okay.
There is always a botched up things. You presume
I
certain
mean,
things.
I've
Yeah,
seen certain
yeah.
incidents in the US,
Yes.
elsewhere as well. But usually it doesn't happen in public eye like this. It happened in front of a camera. And I mean, people who were doing it didn't have any fear of repercussions. And it seems so, right?
Yes.
So something is lacking. Something new has happened here. Is it
Yes,
not true?
for example, somebody is doing operations all the time, so they have this mindset, So they need a constant training for that. For example, firearm training, because it can take life, so you have to be very discreet. So those kind of trainings, SOPs, you have to look at the SOPs again and again. Then certain procedures, and then lawmaking also. There's certain things. For example, when you say that was a terrorist, for example, there was a press release or whatever their statement. Why they thought it was a terrorist? That's the question. And does terrorist travel with the family,
Okay.
with the kids? And maybe, you never know actually.
The
that
argument
it
was
might be
that they
perfect
were
cover as
using
well.
human shield.
Yeah.
Human shield, yes.
This
they
can
might.
happen.
But we have the pictures we have seen is as if they were part of the same family, and we have seen old pictures where the children are younger. Ma'am, regarding laws, of course, I see that perhaps the government is like right now just taken over, and it is learning as we go. But regarding certain aspects, there should be an argument how to actually deal with certain issues. You already have an example, Raw and War. Today, our honorable, Minister for Human Rights has tweeted, and she has compared Raw and War's episode with this one. Do you think a parallel here, or something different is happening now?
See, it's parallel also and it's different also, that he was also a father of 2 daughters, and here we can see there are 2 very small girls.
Yeah.
This is similarity, but there must be a lot of difference also, because he has been killed claiming that he is a terrorist, which we have come to know that he was not. He was just an ordinary man.
You're talking about Naqibullah Masood.
Naqibullah Masood. And he just, you can say that he was very fond of taking pictures of himself, selfie.
Yeah. He wanted
that's
to
why
be a model.
Yeah. He became famous, and I don't know why he has been killed. And then this man he was going with the family and everything. I don't know from where they have got this that they were terrorists. How can a man will take his family with him, such small children, to a marriage, and that was real marriage, because they have cancelled the occasion and there was so much hue and cry there, because this was a big accident in their life.
Okay. So we have to have a lot of debate about it. You said Parliament is debating, but Parliament is also supposed to have an oversight mechanism. Usually standing committees do it. You haven't created any standing committees so far.
Because you know, it's very bad to say this, but actually opposition didn't let us do our work.
How?
Because
It's the speaker who
they-
actually nominates the members of the
yes, but first of all, this what you say, Shehbaz Sharif was not been elected or selected as the chief of.
So
the,
it is not a
because of
lifetime
that, yes.
lifetime decision. If you cannot find a person to represent opposition, you at least create a standing committee. Then you can change it with your own constituents.
I'll give you this reply that whenever we started doing, they create so much hue and cry in the assembly that even you have seen or witnessed that when the Khan Sahab, our PM, has started his first speech in assembly, they didn't let him.
Yeah, but that was PM, right?
Yeah.
Speaker can do it
Speaker
while
can-
sitting in his own chamber. I mean, he doesn't need any person from outside. He can
I
nominate
think-
you. He can nominate anybody.
Yes.
Any lawmaker.
Yes, but I think they were trying to get some condition where they'll do it in a proper way. You know, it's not that assembly is making noise.
So what
and
do we
assembly
do
is
with the
making
cases that
slogans.
happen? I see that opposition actually made a killing in the parliament today. They were supposed to, because here's an incident and there is a due diligence process that is taking place. So it was served to them on a platter.
Yes.
But if you had somebody, some standing committee, maybe you could divert the discussion to the standing committee rather than the floor of the house.
They might know better why
Yeah.
they didn't do it yet, but very soon it will be done.
How soon?
Because I think in a week or so. they'll be-
Remember, this was your answer last time you came months ago.
because you know, it's very difficult to say something on behalf of the government.
Yeah, but I mean, if you have a complaint, if you have a concern, you can air it. Nobody
Yeah.
is going to actually say that, hey, you come from the same party. There are others who are very vocal. Osama, how to fix the entire system? Is it going to be a suo motu that decides what happens in the coming days? Because the new Chief Justice who has taken over has already made it plain that suo motus will not be taken in that frequency like the previous bench did. The question is then, where does the catalyst come from? Will I have to die to make sure that laws are made?
No, hopefully not. Well, Pitafi Sahab, the thing
But
is,
somebody died, right?
absolutely it did, and it's a
By
loss.
me,
for,
I meant
no, absolutely,
somebody.
it's a loss for the country, and each life matters. Everyone's a Pakistani, everyone's a human being, and the government would be answerable for this as well. As far as the last government was concerned and the last Chief Justice were concerned, the dynamics were slightly different. The executive and the legislature stopped operating post-Panama. They were directed towards personal gains, to save one person, save his skin. That's what all the law reform was about. That is what the legislative debate was about. And
I see your point.
there's three pillars to a state. If two of them stop functioning, one pillar, the remaining pillar, had to take the burden on its shoulder. That is what the Chief Justice was doing, the former Chief Justice was doing. As far as people say that there was plenty of judicial activism, I don't criticize him for that. At least he was doing something which was for the betterment of this country. As far as the incoming Chief Justice is concerned, he's made it categorically clear that he does not intend to get involved in suo motus the way the previous Chief Justice was. And that's primarily because of the reason that now you have a legislature and you have an executive, which to me sounds prudent. They will carry their own weight. they will carry the
Yeah.
burdens, and they will not throw this back on the judiciary for them to handle.
And then there are other levels of judiciary as well, and they can do whatever they want to.
Absolutely. If you had heard the speech of the Chief Justice,
Yeah, I
he made
did.
it very clear about
Yeah,
the
but we
reforms
are
that he
not
wants.
talking
No,
about Chief
absolutely
Justice.
not.
I'm
Absolutely
talking about
not.
the catalyst.
Absolutely, absolutely.
The trigger.
The trigger, the catalyst is that the three pillars of the state, they need to start performing their duties
Okay.
well within their spheres. Once they start doing that, that is going to be a
Yeah,
catalyst.
but you are talking about values right now.
It's not values, this is practical. The parliament needs to start legislating. That is what they're there to do. The executive needs to start giving policy lines, which they are doing, but they need to do that better. The judiciary needs to start interpreting laws rather than run the government and run the executive. So once these dynamics fall into their optimum positions, I think that would be your catalyst. That is what is going to trigger the reactions.
Right. I'm just told, Nusrat Vaid Sahaba, that you have to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
So if you want to say your final piece, please do, and then
Yeah.
I will thank you.
Yes. I just want to say that our government should train policemen like a human being also,
Okay.
because it's not
And
only the guns.
how are you going
and
to
the-
ensure that will happen?
I'm not ensuring, I'm just
No,
requesting.
no, I'm talking
Yeah.
about how does your government ensure that happens?
Because when they give training to those policemen in any department of police, they should give some moral lesson also. They should give some humanity lesson also,
Okay.
and they should have some empathy also.
Okay.
All of them.
And
Yes.
how to actually ensure that happens?
When they were giving training in the classes,
Okay.
they should have
But
some.
don't you have to have laws to ensure that?
I think it's not the law. It's actually the inner feelings of that should implement.
Yeah, but the problem is if everybody actually starts following their inner feeling, they might end up doing something of the similar sort. I mean, if I'm angry, I will carry out whatever I want.
No, you won't kill anyone.
No, I
because
won't. But you don't know about
because
other people.
you know, when you tell them, because whosoever is getting the training, they are in a very fragile age, very young age. When you give them some good lectures on empathy, then I think that
Yeah.
will go back to their mind, and
I
they will
think
not
we
do
have-
wrong things.
I think we have been through that process as well. But I'm told that I have to thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
Welcome.
Let me now go to Tipu Saab again, sir. How to make sure that, such due diligence takes place, that there are people who are well trained to respond to various situations without actually going for an overkill.
I told you earlier that this was an incident, this was waiting to happen, and it happened.
Yeah.
Once the state decides what happened in Karachi, it was a state-sanctioned counter-terrorism measures, and most of it were extrajudicial.
Okay.
So the state has to change its policy. And then the laws, not laws actually, the procedures have to be changed.
Okay.
And you mentioned, Osama sir mentioned just
But
what-
here's a country where we are debating after 4 years whether we should have military courts or not. We know that we have done precious little to fix the judicial system. And then if we have some additional mechanism, we have to rule that out as well. So how are we going to fix the system that quickly? Because terrorism is a current and present danger, is it not?
We are just talking about laws and everything,
Yeah.
but let me add one thing that the recently Supreme Court, they had set up a committee,
Yeah.
Police Reforms Committee headed by one of our retired IGPs. Actually, we also belong to the Association of Forward Inspector Generals of Police, and I'm
Shigri
also,
Saab was
Shigri Saab was
heading
the head
it,
of it, yeah. And they submitted their report, and that was all about what should be done about policing.
Yeah.
And actually, the Supreme Court, one of the volumes, there were 2 volumes, they accepted that and they have given instructions. And the Law Commission is, they are, finalizing the recommendation, they will send it to the.
Yeah.
So I think that, first of all, the police has to be made autonomous. It's necessary that all this counter-terrorism measures should be under one roof, one
Okay.
person, one focal organization.
In one province or at the center?
At the center we have a NECTA, and
Yeah.
they are the policy-making body, and they are doing a fine job. But
So are we arguing that we have to somehow at least reverse the parts of 18th Amendment? Because police is default subject, is it not?
no, it's policing is standardization. It's the federal subject.
Okay.
It's
I
because
mean,
criminal
IGPs
laws
are provincial, right?
No, but the criminal laws, they are the federal subject. So, I mean, if you have a CRPC, then CRPC is all about the policing and the magistracy.
Okay.
So, how can you can separate it from? You have to be standardization of laws
Right,
there.
but the issue is when an IGP is effectively the head of the force, right?
That's right.
And he reports to the minister of a province, not the center.
That's right.
So what do we do now? We create a different element that reports to the center, to NACTA?
No, CTD is already doing it.
Okay.
Yeah, because this is a trans-boundary thing, and some of the laws we need to have all over Pakistan.
Okay.
And policing, this is actually being debated. This is already petition is in Supreme Court, and they're discussing it. And hopefully, very soon they will come up with this thing that there should be one law for all of Pakistan.
Yeah, I had the honorable members of that commission, 3 IGPs, serving IGPs, and the Secretary of the Law and Justice Commission in my program. And when I asked about laws, they said that it has to be left to the, the parliament, because a judiciary cannot actually get involved in their job. And while you're talking about these matters, I don't see People's Party will see this arrangement, or PMLN will see this arrangement in the presence of 18th Amendment as something that they will welcome very confidently.
No, it's actually the interpretation, the how you interpret that thing. People take it, that the policing is a devolved subject, but the law is a federal subject.
Right.
And yeah, this is a basic, what they call that structure theory, that the law should be standard all over Pakistan, but the provinces can make certain amendments according to their needs and context.
Okay.
So that is being debated now.
Right.
And we believe that the law should be standard all over Pakistan, the same law, and Police Order 2002 should be implemented all over Pakistan.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and I have to bring back Osama as well. Osama, it takes us many years fighting terrorism to come up with a consensus document that is called National Action Plan. And when you look at 20 points of National Action Plan, that is functionally, practically, a wish list. Nothing more than that. It doesn't have that kind of structure, what to do it. It is not a plan per se. And when we are talking about these matters after so much time, after this terrible incident, now we are saying that we have to incorporate certain laws. Is there something lacking in our collective imagination that refuses to see terrorism as a serious threat, and that's why we cannot progress forward?
No, I think that's not the case. Terrorism is as real as it gets. The dilemma here is implementation. I'll take you back to Section 5.2 of the ATA. It very clearly states that if you have to open fire, you will give a prior warning.
Okay.
You will keep all facts and circumstances in consideration while doing so. It defines a grade of an officer who will authorize such an activity. And if you're going for a kill, you need to make sure that you don't inflict any more harm than which is required.
But you're mentioning ATA. After
Absolutely.
that, you had PPA, you had so many other things.
Absolutely, but
So
Pitafi Sahab,
they changed the structure of
Pitafi Sahab,
mechanism.
the reason I say this is that this particular section gives you guidelines. It gives you procedure, it gives you an SOP. Now, this thing is about 2 decades old.
Yeah, but
If
I'm
you-
asking you whether it was superseded by new laws or was it not?
I think ATA is still in force.
Okay.
ATA has not been repealed.
Okay.
There
No,
are
not
other
repealed,
laws which came into
but
force.
if there were certain additions to the practice of law,
Absolutely.
that might be there in PPA as well, which was called Protection of Pakistan Ordinance
but
first.
they lapsed. Both of them lapsed. The 2013 one lapsed as well. The 2014 one lapsed as well. After that, you had NACTA. Then there was a NACTA amendment, and at most, what came in the middle was the Prevention of Electronic Crimes, which has nothing to do with this. So ATA, as it stands, it's there unless it's been changed by NACTA or the NACTA amendment to that extent.
Yeah,
but
this
till
is what
then,
I'm-
it's a living document till it's
Right.
repealed by the parliament fully.
Okay.
Now, the reason I make this point is that this is about 20 years old. If you can't follow those SOPs, God knows what you're going to follow. These things have been there forever.
Evidently, we are not following that.
Absolutely. So it's the implementation. It's not that your law is quiet about it. It's not that you don't know
Yeah,
what
but
the standards are.
this argument that somehow it is a living document, that your law keeps on changing, it fails me, honestly. I've done so many programs on terrorism, and yet the base, it came back to two things: narrative, national narrative, and laws. And we didn't see that kind of, a natural law evolving after terrorist activities. I mean, you lost 84,000 people, and yet we are talking about SOPs.
Okay, then you need to find out the different extents of terrorism. The terrorism that we were facing during the Musharraf tenure, that was different.
Okay.
Suicide bombings all across the country. Now the dynamics of terrorism have changed as well. It's not just terrorism as per actual, but you've also got electronic terrorism.
Threat remains there.
Threat remains there, but the threat needs to be addressed heads on. For that, as I mentioned previously, the committees need to get working. It's brainstorming, it's collaboration. The more you debate it, the more you talk about it, the more ideas you will have, and the more problems you'll be able to address. Because if you keep going with the existing system, it's now you haven't deliberated on it for many years.
Yeah, my concern is there is a significant part of imagination that might be missing, and what to do to actually revive it. Because if you are seeing some threat in front of you and you haven't been able to come up with a mechanism holistically to deal with it, then you are lacking in
But
something.
what about Pratapji, what about those things which you cannot foresee? Because obviously, when you make these laws, then you either need to start thinking like a terrorist as to how they would act.
No, but you have to think like a state. Suicide bombings, umpteen have taken place. Terrorist smuggling, kidnapping people, using human shield, everything has happened in this country.
Absolutely.
If we cannot see it coming, then it is our flaw.
We did not see terrorism financing coming till just recently. It's a very recent induction into our laws after the enactment of the money laundering laws, anti-money laundering laws. That is when we started addressing terrorism financing.
Right.
Well,
sir. You want to add to this?
Yeah, I would say that we are just diverting our attention to, I think actually this is one incident happened. It's not that terrorism incidents have upswing. It's just a botched up operation it's a counter-terrorism operation actually. So what we need to do is, I think, it's a training and some strengthening of SOPs.
Right.
And looking at it again, what he has mentioned.
Actually, since you have been an IGP, you're looking at from up there, right? From the macro level. Being a citizen and a commoner, I see it from the micro level. And whether it is one botched up operation or not, there are 2-3 kids who are actually who have been traumatized, right? So I don't want to put myself in that position. I'm sure that others don't.
But that's exactly why I'm saying that the SOPs were wrong. They did something wrong.
Okay.
Their supervision was not good. Maybe the training was not good.
So what is the maximum punishment?
I see that what Osama has mentioned, that maybe, I cannot say actually.
Imprisonment.
Maybe. And another thing I want to add, the JIT, I think the 3 days were given. Tomorrow they have to, it's very...
Yeah, tomorrow at 5.
Tomorrow at 5.
CM
so
said,
it is, I
said
mean,
it today.
we sometimes, incident happens, then even there should be SOP for this, completing this thing, making a TOR for this JIT and then conducting inquiry, investigation takes a lot of time. Even the witnesses and everything. I was told that there were a few witnesses they couldn't see. So I mean, if they give an incomplete report, and also they are working under pressure, and the pendulum has swung other way.
Okay.
Now the pressure on GIT to just give a punishment, I recommend some harsh measures. That is also not required, I think.
Yeah, but GIT is not supposed to do it. It is basically,
recommend something.
court which will tackle
That's
that
right.
matter. Before we conclude, let me talk about media's role as well. I wish we had representation from media. Do you think that media, whatever it is doing, you are satisfied with it?
No. I think that the media, as usual, has sensationalized. They have started a media trial. They have just forgotten about all the past complaints CTD. I have been also remained as active member and chairman
media
of PEMRA.
should be more responsible.
They are not. They are not following their code of conduct.
Right.
And they are sensationalizing things.
Right.
And actually, they are inciting to violence. So this is, I think, I don't see a good role
Right,
for media.
sir.
Yeah.
on that note, I'm told that we have to conclude. Media might have actually done a good job in bringing up the matter, but after that, it has been downward movement. But sir, I'm told that we have to conclude the program. Kamaluddin Tipu Sahab, thank you very much for your time. Osama Azim Chaudhary, thank you very much for your time as well. I have already thanked the third guest who has left already, because this was today's program. In coming days, we'll keep on discussing this matter as much as possible. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.